Chris Yandeck, CYInterview, covering Las Vegas and the world. We welcome back to CYInterview Hollywood legend, actress, dancer, philanthropist, and author Ruta Lee. As an actress, she is known for her roles in Seven Brides for Seven Brothers and Witness for the Prosecution. Her 2020 memoir is titled Consider Your Ass Kissed, and she is a longtime philanthropist and supporter of the organization, the Thalians. Ruta, thank you so much for being on CYInterview. You don't know how happy I am you're here.
Oh my, what a lovely opening, and thank you so much for the invitation to join you. And you know, you can call me anytime. I want to visit with you and with your loyal, darling listeners.
Well, I appreciate that very much. So let's just talk about your 90th birthday celebration. What did that mean to you?
Well, I hate birthdays to start with. To begin with, Chris, I hate that frigging song. Yeah, da, yeah, 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 yeah. It's done for happy birthday, happy bar mitzvah, happy 4th of July. It's done for everything, isn't it? And I've never liked it. And I thought the only way that I can face another birthday, mind you, my 90th birthday, is to work through it. So instead of just sitting home looking at my candles, I did a show at the El Portal here in Los Angeles, in Burbank, a benefit for my Thalians, a fundraiser for that. And I invited some wonderful personal friends to be my guest stars. And we did a big knockdown, beautiful, well, a Vegas review show is what we did. And it was very successful. And we raised a lot of money. One of my beautiful patronesses of the theater and of the Thalians gave me $90,000 for the Thalians in honor of my 90th birthday. And I said, wow, that's the dear Lord taking care of me. Lots of other beautiful donations came in. So it was worth the effort, and it was worth having my 90th. Listen, the alternative to being as old as dirt is really lousy. So I don't mind being the oldest lady in the room anymore. And if I'm still full of, as I say in show business, full of piss and vinegar, then I'm still good to go.
So let me ask you, a couple of years ago when we talked about your memoir, you talked about living to 120. Is that still the goal?
It sure is. The Bible promises us that, and I want every one of them. And I keep promising the Almighty that I will keep doing good work on His behalf. But I want them all with my brain still functioning. You know, so that's the main thing.
I get that, and I hope for you for that, and everybody else, obviously. Neil Sedaka is going to be honored by the Thalians in December. Tell me what's going on with that.
Isn't that exciting? Well, the Thalians, as you know, we used to do great big huge events, 1,500 people, with great big fabulous stars of either the screen or the small screen or radio or television or whatever stage. And it got so expensive. Chris, I mean, the money that it costs to put on an event almost made it not worthwhile to try and raise money. It was very difficult. So we started doing smaller events. And now we're doing a beautiful event at the Bel Air Country Club. And just think, a fabulous person like Neil Sedaka, who is one of the, also not the youngsters, he's been around a while, but he always maintains a youthful attitude, youthful music, and we're having this wonderful start for the Christmas party, the Christmas season on the 9th of, is it the 9th or the 6th? Now I forgot myself.
I have the 6th written down. I think I wrote it around.
The 6th, thank you. The 6th of December, and my beautiful friend Ann Gillian, that everybody remembers. She starred on Broadway in Sugar Babies, but she also starred in a wonderful series for television. And she will be our guest star along with the fabulous Neil Sedaka. So I invite everybody who has a nickel to spend to join us. Go to the Thalians, THALIANS.org, not com, but org, and you'll get all the information that you need. Or look to Chris, he'll provide it.
I will absolutely link in the bottom to this video and on CYInterview, of course. I just have to tell you in this regard, the reality of what it comes down to is that it's just kind of like, how does it feel today? I mean, you've lived an unbelievable life. There's so much energy still there. You want to do something positive every day. You have such a great story. There's just so many layers to your life. I mean, at this point, what do you think inspires you every day?
I think what inspires me is the fact that there is something, if it isn't a somebody, there is a fabulous energy that is far more important than you or I, Chris. And that I think we are all remembered for whatever good works we do along the way. And good works don't have to be raising millions of dollars for something. It can be giving a smile to a person on the road that looks troubled, or saying hello to the people on the elevator that you're riding on, or saying hello to your wonderful audience and hopefully putting a smile, if not a question mark, on their faces. That's good works. Putting a smile onto every face that you cross is my idea of good works. And if you can do some really important stuff along the way, more power to you. But I don't think that's demanded of all of us. I think our guardian angels kind of tell us what to do every day.
Speaking about that, you've had a great acting career. Would you consider a role on a TV series or a movie if the right role or script came
Hell
up?
yes. Of course I would. My good friend Betty White lived far beyond what she expected to live, and she worked every day of her life, and that's sort of what I have in mind. And I'm still singing and I'm still dancing, and of course the leading lady roles are not there anymore because, as I said, I'm older than dirt. But if I still have the energy, and Lord knows God gives it to me, I still want to keep working forever.
Tell me about your one-woman show. Would you like to expand this upon California and take it across America? What is your hope? Do you think it's possible?
Well, it's very possible, but I don't want to travel all that much anymore. I still want to hit the few places on my bucket list that I haven't been. I just came home from a month in Tuscany, which had been on my bucket list for a long time, and it was fabulous. On the bucket list, I still have Africa. I am such an animal freak and lover of animals that I would love to go on one of those very, very fancy safaris. I don't want any snakes crawling into my cabin or whatever, but one of those fabulous safaris, that's on my bucket list.
I can help you with that. I've been to Kenya.
Yeah? Tell me about it.
Yeah, I will. Listen, what you need to do is that you need to go to Kenya, which is where a lot of Americans go.
Yes.
And you need to go to the beach coast, which is like Malindi, Mombasa, Watamu. And then you go, because there's a bunch of resorts out there that were built by Italians many years ago. It's like a European thing. It's on the beach coast. And then you go to Tsavo National Park, which is an unbelievable safari. And you'll see the elephants and the giraffes and the zebras and all of that. We'll talk about it more after the recording. But
we will. Yes, I will call you before I go.
Oh, well, we will definitely talk about it for sure. All right, so let's move forward on that. A lot of people are going to say, there's no way that Ruta Lee is 90. You look phenomenal. What are the secrets?
Oh, God bless you. No secrets at all. I love life. I love keeping very busy in my life. And I always thought, gee, as I get older, things will slow down. I think they heighten, frankly. I'm not quite sure. And of course, as you know, Chris, I sort of sleep around. And when I say sleep around, is because I have my home here in Los Angeles. I have a place in Palm Springs. I have a home in Fort Worth, Texas, and I have a home in Mexico. So I really do sleep around. And I love it. And I like spending time in each place, but there really just isn't quite enough time. And the Thalians does take up a lot of my time. And when it comes to doing my show, yeah, I will do it wherever I'm invited, providing it's not a horrendous schlep somewhere, you know. And I'd love to do it in England, one of my favorite places. I'd love to do it again in Italy, another one of my favorite places. Paris is, of course, one of the most beautiful cities in the world. Listen, I'll do anywhere that I'm invited, especially if it's for a group that's doing charitable work, and so that we can help raise funds for a charity. That's the idea.
We should get you back here to Las Vegas because there's so many resorts that can have a wonderful 1 minute. We got to get you here to Las Vegas. Let me just ask you, obviously Hollywood has changed a lot since you were in Hollywood at the beginning. What are your thoughts on Hollywood today and its future?
My thoughts today are, because I am in the fundraising business, as you know, the Thalians now has put its focus, it's always been Hollywood for mental health, but now we're putting our focus on our returning veterans. And we've teamed up with UCLA and Operation Mend. And Operation Mend heals broken and fractured bodies of our fabulous young people that we send to every hellhole in the world. And they are willing to die for America. And then they come back home and sometimes fall through the cracks and wind up homeless and not being taken care of. So OpMend heals the broken and fractured bodies of these gorgeous young people, whereas we Thalians are healing and hoping for healing for the broken and fractured mind and spirit. And so that takes up a lot of my precious time. And I am very happy to spend it doing that. And when it comes to the rest of the world, I want you all to participate with us in taking care of our veterans, those beautiful young people that we're talking of, and help us cure them.
I think it's a wonderful cause. You know, looking at today's Hollywood, I mean, are there any, who is like, have you ever said this? Oh, this person reminds me of Frank Sinatra or Marilyn Monroe or Gregory Peck. Are there anyone out there today that you think is doing a good job?
There are lots of people doing beautiful work on stage, but I have to tell you, Chris, and I share this with you and with your viewers, this group of young people, and I realize I'm drawing a very broad stroke with a very wide brush here. Not everybody fits it. But I feel that this generation of performers are very much into me, I. You can't reach them as easily as you did a Debbie Reynolds or a Frank Sinatra or a Marilyn Monroe to do something for a charity. I feel that we are not raising our kids like the people that came out of vaudeville and the show business that followed, that you had to give back some of the good fortune that comes your way. And it is harder now to find stars to be our honorees for the Thalians. When you stop and think that we have the greatest stars in Hollywood or New York on our stage receiving the award that was created for us by Mr. Wonderful himself, Walt Disney. And to get people now, you have to go through a plethora of management and agents and masseuses and hairdressers and everybody in the world. If you can get to the star themselves, you usually get a yes, I'll be there and I'll do it. But to have to go through that phalanx of people to get through to a star anymore is impossible. I mean, I literally used to be able to pick up the phone and call Sammy Davis and say, will you be our honoree? Or Frank Sinatra or Dean Martin or whoever. And I can't do that now. Well, maybe it's because they don't know me. I don't know. But it's a different vibration that we get from the younger people of today that are the stars of today.
Well, we're going to try to help you a little bit about that with the Thalians. I've got some ideas. I want to ask you a question that I've never asked you before in our past, I believe, 3 or 4 CY interviews. It's a random one, but we've just never gone into it. Obviously, Debbie Reynolds was one of your dear friends. What did you think of her casino in Las Vegas when it was open?
I think that she approached it probably the wrong way. I loved it. I loved what they did. But her son, who is marvelous, a son to her, was in charge of her museum and the showroom that was being done. And instead of costing, like $1 million, it wound up costing a hell of a lot more. And I feel like somehow it was being run by her then third husband. And Debbie, as you know, Chris, was the first to say, I have the most extraordinarily good taste in girlfriends and lousiest taste in husbands. And her husband, I think, screwed her and the casino royally. And lots more money disappeared. And I cannot go into a hell of a lot more or I'll get sued. But you know where I'm going with all of this. She did not make the right choices.
Let's look back at something that's wonderful. The game show High Roller celebrated its 50th anniversary last year. Of course, you and the great Alex Trebek, a dear friend of yours. What do you reflect back upon?
Well, that sweet man was a very good friend, and he wrote the opener for my book, Consider Your Ass Kissed. And he was just such a good friend, and what a lovely man. And when you stop and think about it, game shows were a beautiful entree to get to know the stars that you met on game shows personally. And what you saw on stage or on screen is what you got. And Alex had the wildest sense of humor in the world. Unfortunately, you didn't get to see that much of it on his show, but on Hollywood Squares that I was a regular on, you got to meet us all individually, whether it was Password or it was You Don't Say or PDQ or whatever. You got to see the so-called star in their full power and in their natural attitude, and you either invited them in or you didn't. And I have always been so grateful to the game shows and the talk shows because people invited me into their homes, their living rooms, their kitchens, their bathrooms, and spent time with me and allowed me to kind of strut my stuff. And they got to know me personally. And so I felt like I didn't make fans, Chris. I made friends. And thank you, Lord, for the privilege.
Let me ask you, focusing on Hollywood today, people that you grew up with, people you worked with, who are some of your friends today in Hollywood that are still with us that you enjoy talking to or being around?
All of them. I mean, gosh, you take someone like a Shirley MacLaine, who is unbelievable. You take Sally Struthers, who grew up with all of us and is a fabulous girl and a good broad, a good dame. I, of course, absolutely adored Frank Sinatra and miss him terribly. Wish he was still here. As I do Dean and Sammy and the whole gang that I worked with on a movie called Sergeants 3. they're not around anymore, except in some ways they are, because their recordings, you know, when you stop and think of Frank and Dean, we can hear their music every day, and it's like having them with us every day. And I'm so grateful for the privilege of having been with them. And I think about Murder, She Wrote, and Angela Lansbury, and what a privilege it was to know her, and what a privilege it was to know my darling Alex Trebek. Wow. Of those, there are not that many left alive that were of my generation. But of the new young people, gosh, there are a lot of very sweet people. And I have depended on a lot of those gorgeous people to come and be stars at our coming shows. And of course, like I said, Anne Gillian is of Lithuanian descent also. And you with a name like Yandek, what nationality is back there?
Czechoslovakian, and you're like one of the few people who ever pronounced it correctly. I mean, we've known each other for many years now, but you actually pronounced it correctly.
Oh, I'm so happy to hear that. Well, you know, we all come from somewhere. All of us here come from somewhere. Well, Anne Gillian, of course, is from a Lithuanian descent. And amazingly enough, her fathers who came from Lithuania might possibly be related to the current president of Lithuania. And so I'm trying to get us, Annie and myself, to go to Lithuania and go visit with the president and see if we can work out who in the background had the same name.
I remember a couple of years ago, so maybe you can help reflect upon this. Did you go to Europe in recent years, or did you show interest in wanting to go to Europe, which you just mentioned?
Europe I've been to many times, but are you talking about Lithuania?
Correct, exactly.
Oh, yes. Well, that was the adventure that this current generation knows nothing about, but the older generation does, because my grandparents were little farm folk from Lithuania. They were considered exceedingly wealthy because they had a cow. So you know what I'm talking about. And they had a tiny little house, and they raised their vegetables, and they tried to make a living. And they were deported to Siberia. And Chris, you will ask, along with everybody else, why? Why would these little farm folks that didn't have diddly squat get shipped off to Siberia? Well, I think it was when the Soviet authorities were attempting to repatriate the Baltics and Poland and Czechoslovakia and everybody with Russians, shipping Lithuanians and Poles and whatnot off to other places and bringing in Russians. And they got shipped off in the cattle cars that they were being deported on. And my grandfather's legs were frozen on this cattle car. They tried to huddle the women together and the children. And when they took off his boots, the flesh came up with him. He died from gangrene. And my grandmother was still on the train being shipped off. She spent 15 years in Siberia, finally located other members of the family that had also been shipped off to Siberia. She literally hitchhiked as a 90-year-old across Siberia, getting rides on trucks and with people that had space for her, and eventually was permitted to either stay in the Soviet Union in Siberia or to go back to Lithuania. Well, of course, they chose to go back. And in the meantime, I, as the first American citizen, having been raised in Montreal, Canada, was the first to become a citizen of the US, and therefore I started making out what they call vizovs, which is a Lithuanian written, English written, and Russian written invitation that says, "Dear Grandmama, you are failing in health and you're going to be a burden to the state and to your family. come and live with me in California. I will assume full costs of bringing you here, so on and so forth. And it's a wonderful BS letter that you have stamped by a city, by an attorney and a notary. And then that has to be stamped with a city seal. Then the city seal has to be stamped with a state seal. And then you send the whole thing to the State Department and they put a seal on it. And now these 3 letters this thick are now this thick with stamps. And you send it to your party in the Soviet Union. And the commissar is very impressed with it, but of course looks at it, reads it, and goes, "Nyet," and 6 months later, I have to do it all over again. And I did that for 12 years. And finally, I came home one day, and my mother was in a spate of tears. We had gotten a letter from my grandmother, who did not read or write because she had never been to school. But one of my aunts wrote it for her, thanking us for the things that we had sent to them in Siberia that they survived on and other places. And she was dying, and she thanked us for sending her the babushka and the apron and the skirt and blouse that she would be buried in. Very important there. And I went out with friends that night, and the more wine that they poured at dinner, the more obvious it became that I needed to do something very dramatic. So I did. I picked up the phone at about 2 a.m, which corresponded with a business hour in Moscow. And I said to the operator, and those were the days, Chris, you may not even remember, we had something called person-to-person calls. And you paid twice as much for them, but you didn't pay for it unless you got the party you were calling. So I made a person-to-person call to Khrushchev, the Kremlin, Moscow, USSR. And the operator came on the line and said, "Hi, it's spell Khrushchev." Well, who in hell knew how to spell Khrushchev? Anyway, place the call. Yet, can't speak Khrushchev, don't speak it. No. It was no. In the meantime, I started calling the Russian embassy in Washington. And I spoke with everybody from the dishwasher to the window washer to the gardener to everybody. No, yet, can't speak to anybody. Finally, the operator calls back from Moscow and says, "Mr. Khrushchev, no speak it English. You speak it with interpreter." And I remembered that he traveled with a very handsome young Russian man who did beautiful jobs of interpreting and taking the rude things that Khrushchev was saying when he was banging his shoe on our podiums and translated it into good stuff palatable to our Victorian ears. And so I spoke with him and he said, "Yes, Miss Lee, what can we do for you?" And I said, "I want to come to the Soviet Union. I want to come to Lithuania. I want to bring my mother and father. I'd been warned not to take them because they were born there and they could be detained." Excuse me. And he said, "Talk to the embassy in Moscow again in a half hour." And I thought, again, he's putting me through that go around that I'm going to have. Well, this time when I called, I was connected directly to the first secretary, who happened to be Lithuanian, and I am fairly fluent in Lithuanian. And to cut this very long story just a tiny bit shorter, within 48 hours, I had the papers for my mom and dad and myself, and we were on a Pan Am heading off to Moscow and then doubling back to Lithuania. And the following 6 months, I went back and got my grandmother out of the Soviet Union. I was given permission to bring her back to the United States, where she lived here in California, in Hollywood, for 2 years, 2 months, and 2 days. And when I'm allowed into the pearly gates, I have a bone to pick with God, and that is After all that effort, couldn't I have had her more than 2 years? A little more than that, God. Well, I'll see her again when I get up there.
What years were this, if you don't mind?
64. 1964.
Just a
So I was
much
young and stupid and afraid of nothing.
And because of that, you got to spend time with your grandmother in America.
Yes, yes.
That's completely wonderful. Why don't you tell me a couple of things I'd love to know? This is just general stuff for people watching. For people may know who the members of the Rat Pack were, but how would you define them?
They were guys that started out, believe it or not, just visiting Frank in Palm Springs. And I often play a wonderful saloon dinner house, a great nightclub, a dinner theater in Palm Springs called the Purple Room. And Frank used to go there a lot. And he took all of his friends there, myself included, thank God. And Frank was singing one day, and the pianist was in tears because she was afraid to play for him. But Frank was so marvelous. And he was singing, and he did a couple of numbers. And then Dean Martin, who was slightly sloshed on good stuff, said, "Oh, sit down, Paisan, let me sing for a while." And he got up and sang. And then Frank got him out of the way, and Sammy Davis got up and sang. And someone said, you guys should do an act. And that's when Frank put together the whole gang that he brought in, Joey Bishop and Peter Lawford and all of the comics from Vegas that were all good pals of his. And they got to be the Rat Pack. They were a group of guys that got up and sang and ribbed and teased each other like crazy. And I will never forget, as long as I live, Chris, being at a birthday party in Vegas that Frank was tossing Dean Martin. Now, we had been on location up in Kanab, Utah, and I didn't know that I was going to be spending time in Vegas. So I had on a little cotton dress, and there sat Elizabeth Taylor next door to me in a gorgeous beaded gown, and there sat John Wayne, and there sat everybody in Hollywood. It was just marvelous. And into the room, back of the Sands Hotel, walked Frank Sinatra, and on his arm was the gorgeous Marilyn Monroe. Now, I've got to tell you, Chris, Marilyn just looked like a spotlight hitter. And she didn't even have a spotlight on her, but she had this glorious glow. All the ladies, Jaja and Ava and all of the Gabor ladies had that glow as well. But in came Marilyn, and Elizabeth Taylor was at her prime beauty in those days. She was then married to Debbie's former husband. And there he was, and she was, but she looked pale and washed out compared to how fabulous Marilyn looked. And I don't know whether it was the white fox that she was wearing, the platinum hair, the beaded sparkly dress, or what, but she was the most glorious creature I'd ever seen. And oh my, what a terrible loss that we lost her so young.
I was going to ask you that story because you tell that story so well, and I could hear that story a million times about how Frank Sinatra brings Marilyn Monroe into the ballroom in Las Vegas, and Elizabeth Taylor is there, and as you kind of say it, she put Elizabeth Taylor to shame, and that's Elizabeth Taylor at the time.
And we're talking Elizabeth at her beauteous best. She was gorgeous, absolutely gorgeous, but that inner glow that was Marilyn, and I don't know whether it was there naturally or whether it was studied or what it was, but oh boy, when she walked in the room, that's where attention was focused.
I want to ask you a few more general ones. What are your favorite 3 places to be in Los Angeles, eat, hang out, whatever it might be?
Well, I think being right at home is one of my very favorite places. Another one of my favorite places, and there's a reason for it, is the Grauman's Chinese Theater. And as you know, Chris, I worked there. I got a summer job when I was going to Hollywood High School. And I needed money for spending money. And I got a job, and I would stand at the top of the aisle in my little Chinese tunic, red tunic, with my black pants and a flashlight. And nobody your age even knows what an usherette was. But we stood at the top of the aisle, and we took people to their seat as they were seated in the dark in whatever place they wanted to sit. And I was very happy there because I could see all of those gorgeous people, like I just mentioned, Marilyn Monroe, and oh my God, those beautiful ladies, June Haver and Betty Grable, and all those great stars doing their beautiful, Mitzi Gaynor, all doing their musical stuff on stage. And I could watch the movies and pray that God would let me do that someday. And then I got promoted to Candy Girl, which was okay in spite of the fact that I was lousy in math, and I still am. But in those days, everything was 10 cents and 15 cents and 25 cents, and a big box of popcorn was 50 cents. So I was okay. Then one day, the cashier in the box office got sick. And I was to replace her in the box office. And I said, oh, I can't, because these are numbers. It's $1.98 and $2.35 for a ticket, and prices that I'm not used to dealing with. No, said the manager. You'll deal with it. You just push in 2 tickets at $1.98, and you feed in $5 and punch it in, and it'll give you the right change. Well, we were $40 short that night. And the manager thought that I had stolen the money, and he fired me. And in big tears, I said, you're making a mistake. I didn't take that money. I told you I was lousy in math, and you'll be sorry. One of these days I'll come back, and you'll be very sorry that you fired me. Well, as the dear Lord would have it, and serendipity and luck raises its head, and my star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame is directly in front of the box office from which I got fired that many years ago. Now, is that a Hollywood story, or is that a Hollywood story?
That is the greatest Hollywood story of them all. I never knew that. That is just, I maybe you told it in the book, and I don't remember because I read the entire book, but that is the irony of all ironies. I mean, the reality of what it comes down to is that it's just kind of like, it's why you should never give up. So here's what I'm going to ask you. Aside, I think, from buying a house, which I think you think is a very important thing, what is your advice to young people?
Well, in my young people, I presume are you talking all young people? I suggested all
20s, 30s, 40s.
Get
young. Yeah,
an education. Get an education. If you're in show business, get an education that is something other than show business. Because while you're on that merry-go-round trying to reach for the star that's going to make you a star in the business, you have to be able to pay for your rent, your food, your transportation, your car, your insurance, your everything. You need to be able to do it. And I don't care if you're tending a table and doing it, or you're tending cars, or whatever you're doing. Get an education and get a job that will feed you while you're trying to be a star. That's very important. But an education is terribly important. An education, for those of you young people who think, oh, this is boring and I don't really want to do this math or whatever, you need it. You need it to be a fuller person. Get an education, no matter how foolish you think you are, and how uninterested you are in proper English and everything else. It's necessary. It's absolutely essential.
I hope more than anything else, listen, I I work with the English language every day, and you still learn things about the English language every day. You have to work on the English language, because if you communicate to somebody that you don't know how to write a proper sentence, it doesn't say much about you.
How right you are, and how foolish young people are who don't think that they need to learn when to use what words.
The yours and the theirs are ones that people just mess up all the time, and loose and loose. It's not L-O-O-S-E for lose, it's L-O-S-E, you know.
Exactly.
But they hear that double O in their head and they think, oh, it's O-O. You know, I just think it's so important to, you know, educate yourself. Listen, you know, even after college, I was still learning a lot about the English language that I never learned in school. And I thought to myself, how did I not learn these things along the way? So that's why you have to keep applying yourself.
We misuse our language so much. Where is it at? Where are you at? You know, it sounds right because you hear it so much. Just because you hear it, recognize where you're hearing it and how important it is.
Oh, absolutely. No denying that. Okay, let's finish up with a couple more. Do you ever make it here to Las Vegas? Ever?
Not as often as I'd like to. It's changed a great deal
It
since
has.
I was there all the time with Frank and Dean and the group. You know, it's slightly different now, but it's still the party place of the world, and I have to recognize it as such. And it has become home to so many wonderful entertainers. First of all, tax-wise, y'all are far more reasonable than those of us in California. And so I appreciate that very much. And I just love that it is home to the entertainment industry. It truly is.
Hopefully we'll get some of those Hollywood studios here soon too, and hopefully we got to get you here for something. We'll figure something out. Got to get you here for some reason. We'd
Is
love
tomorrow too soon?
Yeah. Tomorrow, you could be here tomorrow if you wanted to. You could be here in 45. You know, you could be here in 2 hours if you wanted to be.
That's true.
It's a 45-minute plane ride. Okay, I just want to go down a couple of names of people from your career and one with this. Let's start with Johnny Carson.
Wow. He was very good to me in many, many ways. I did the Carson show many times out of New York. In fact, I'm going to tell a story on myself. One of the shows, I was singing a song and I screwed up the lyrics. Hey, buds below, up is where to go, up with every go, can't compare with. And I couldn't remember it, and I made them up as I went along. Hey, down below, hurry, it's lovely up here. I figured everybody's going to think, oh, their television is out of whack or something. That was the truth. And I told him about it. I don't think he even realized it. And he laughed about it. But that followed my career with my mother, my beautiful little grandmother, like the perils of Pauline. And when Johnny came out here to California, which he did quite often, he had me bring my beautiful little 95-year-old grandmother to the set, and he had her guest on the show. And she didn't understand a word of English, and she just kept rocking and nodding in her chair like this. And Johnny kind of got a little bit discombobulated by this, and he said, what is she thinking? What's going on in her head? And I said, Grandma, what are you thinking? And she smiled, her toothless smile, and she said, tell Johnny that he is the sweetest flower that grows in the garden. Now, if that isn't Hollywood BS, who could have said it any better than my mother? And I said, now I know where my show business pension came from. It was my grandma. Tell him he's the sweetest flower that grows in the garden. Whee!
Could sit here with you. I could sit here with you for 4 weeks, as you know. But
God love you. Well, Johnny,
I love you. I know I could though. I could just ask you a million of these questions because I was fortunate, you know, to speak with, you know, Ernest Borgnine, Diane
he was a
Carroll
precious guy.
and Diane Carroll and some of these others before they passed on. You know what I'm saying? You know, thankfully we still have Robert Wagner and some of these others, but it's just like, you know, I feel so fortunate every day that I have those conversations. I can go
Oh
back and listen
yes,
to,
yes, yes.
you know.
I went to his funeral, Ernie Borgnine's, and it was beautiful. It was a very military funeral because he was such a lover of the military. So it was gorgeous.
Absolutely. Okay, let's continue. James Gardner.
Ah, now there was an adorable guy with a great sense of humor, and he had such a way of dealing with everybody that was so off the cuff and yet so dear. And he had a wild sense of humor. I loved him. I loved him. I loved him. He was a good guy.
Fred Astaire.
Oh, well, my idol. I just always said if I had played my card right, I might have been Mrs. Fred Astaire. His lovely daughter is my very good friend. And his son-in-law was too, but he's unfortunately passed on. But I worked with him for quite a long time, and I mean, he had me tongue-tied all the time, as did Audrey Hepburn in Funny Face, which was the name of the movie that I did. And he was so kind and so sweet. And his daughter would call me and say, "You want to come to dinner?" And I'd say, "Sure, I'd be delighted." And she'd call her dad and say, "You want to come to dinner?" "No, I don't think so, dear. I'm going to stay home." "Well, Ruta's coming." "Oh, well, in that case, maybe I'll come." So he was a very lovely, dear friend. And I'm sorry that he's gone because, wow, there was never a dancer like him. Nobody.
Burt Reynolds.
Ah, another good guy. Wow. All these people that you're mentioning had one thing in common. They had a great, loving sense of humor. They were not afraid to go blah, blah, and spread their laughter and their joke on everybody. He was great. Adored him.
And finally, Clint Eastwood. And
Oh.
are you surprised he's still making movies?
The only thing that surprises me that I have to do something about is that I have never done Clint's movies. I've been in television stuff with Clint, but never have I been in one of his movies. Now, it took me 20 years to get him to be our star, our guest star at the Thalians. He, for 20 years, kept saying, "Oh, I can't, I'm going to be in Africa," or "No, I'm going to be in New York," or "No, I can't. I finally got him. And I promised him that I'd never bug him again if he promised to be our star. And he was fabulous. But I guess I could bend the truth a little and bug him one more time and call him and say, "Put me in that damn movie, whatever it is." Even if it's a tiny bit part, I would just.
It would be hilarious to have you in a couple line part.
It would be
movie. I would love that
so much. It would be even better if it were in a big part.
Yeah. Oh, I agree with that.
I'll take anything I can get.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, absolutely. But the point be told is that yeah, I mean, we got to make that happen too. You know, listen, here's what I'm going to say to you in regard. We'll finish with these last 2 points. I mean, here's what I'm going to say to you. So here's what I'm going to say. What do you say to people? Like, you have so many ambitions. You're at 90. I mean, like, how do you keep the ambitions going? How do you keep that attitude going? A lot of people, you know, they fall apart or they feel lost by the time they get to their 30s or 40s.
Well, I guess I have to thank the Almighty that gave me the kind of parents I had that taught me a work ethic, the likes of which I'm not likely to see very often anymore. And so that I have that need to kind of work and do. And if I'm not working for myself, I find that I am working to help somebody or to better an organization or to help in some way. So it all comes from a power that's higher than myself or that my parents were. And all I can do is say I'm very, very grateful for every breath I take. And if it can be on a set that Clint Eastwood is directing, I'll really be grateful.
Noted, 100%. I know where I'm going to be doing with this CY interview once we're done. Last one. When people say the name or they think of you, what do you hope they take away? Like when they hear the name Ruta Lee or they think of your career, what do you want people to think of?
Well, I've always said that what I would like on my tombstone, and I mean it from the bottom of my heart, that I brought a smile to every face that crossed my path, whether it was four-legged or two-legged, just so long as I brought a touch of a smile, a touch of sunshine to that life.
And then last one, I got to let you promote your book, of course, Considered Your Ass Kissed. Let's just get that one breaking down as always if people haven't read it yet.
Well, that's a title that I've used forever for the people that have done so much good in this world, whether they gave me 5 cents, $5, $500,000. What else could I ever say in gratitude but consider your ass kissed? And I mean it to each and every one of your viewers for being faithful to you and for being faithful to me in any way you can. God bless.
Hollywood legend Ruta Lee, thank you so much for joining us on CYInterview. Hang on with me after we end this recording, but it's always such a delight to hear from you, and I love you so much. I hope you know that.
I do, and I love you.